The story begins on a sun-scorched afternoon when the dry prairie wind howled across the fields of Wyoming and dust swirled against the fences like nature itself had grown restless. And inside that wild land lived a cowboy named Samuel Briggs, a man of steady hands and quiet strength, whose days were spent taming horses, mending fences, and listening to the silence of a world too wide for most men to bear. But this particular day was different, for word had spread like wildfire through the scattered settlement that young Emily Hargrave, the bride of Samuel's neighbor, had been abandoned at the altar, left standing in her white dress as the man who promised her forever had ridden away without explanation, leaving her reputation in tatters and her heart shattered like glass on stone. And when Samuel saw her sitting by the well at the edge of town, her veil torn, her face streaked with tears and dust, he felt a stirring deep within him, not of pity alone, but of something protective, primal, a sense that she belonged nowhere else but safe under his roof. So without asking permission from anyone, without caring what the gossips or preachers would whisper, he stepped off his horse, tipped his hat low, and said in a voice as steady as the earth itself, "Ma'am, you can't stay out here like this. Come with me." And though her eyes widened in fear of what the townsfolk might say, she saw something in Samuel's face that was different from the cruel smirks of the men who had mocked her, or the cold pity of the women who looked at her like she was ruined goods. She saw honesty, quiet fire, and a man who kept his word. So she rose slowly, her hands trembling, and followed him to his horse. And together they rode out of town, every stare fixed on them as though scandal itself had come alive. And soon the lonely cabin came into view, perched against the edge of the woods, where the last rays of the sun turned gold against the rough-hewn logs. And inside that cabin was warmth and the smell of firewood and safety, though it was also filled with the unspoken tension of two souls thrown together by fate. And as Samuel helped her down from the saddle and opened the cabin door, the world seemed to hold its breath, for here was a woman whose future had been stolen and a man whose life had been carved from silence, and no one could have guessed what would come of their meeting. But what happened inside that cabin? When her eyes lifted to his, when she whispered with a trembling voice that she had nowhere else to go, when he swore in that moment that no harm would ever reach her again, was the beginning of a story that would shock every soul who thought they knew them. A story of fire, danger, passion, and redemption. And as the night fell heavy on the plains and the wind rattled against the shutters, Samuel Briggs knew he had taken in not just a neighbor's abandoned bride, but the one woman who could change everything about the life he thought he was meant to live.